Imagine yourself sitting quietly, your body resting against something soft. You're breathing slowly, following the rhythm of nature. The dim light makes everything look simpler, quieter, as if the entire world wishes you to rest and sink into peaceful stillness. Before you lies a long journey that does not require quick steps or hurried thoughts. You are simply invited to listen to a world far older than any words ever spoken. This world holds stories carved not in books or written records, but in silent stone that guards its secrets without sound. Footprints that hardened and remained in form, left by beings who lived before names existed and before humans began writing their stories. In this silence, you do not need to rush. Just feel that time moves at its own pace. Humans have always tried to capture history with writing and voice. Yet there was an age when life unfolded without needing meaning from words. In that age, eyes and body movements were the only language. Hunger, comfort, fear, and curiosity were all reflected in the direction of footsteps or a gaze fixed on something now lost to us. The footprints turned to stone are messages that survived through harsh weather and endless changes of the earth. Imagine we are slowly following those lines of steps, as if we are bowing toward the hardened ground, trying to understand what once happened there. Each print holds a story never spoken aloud. Those who left those marks likely never imagined that someday creatures like us would try to interpret their journey. They did not walk to be remembered. They moved because life demanded that they keep going. They searched for shelter, for water, for food, or simply ran from something that lurked in the darkness of the trees. The sound of the night back then must have been different from what you know now. No tall buildings, no electric lights, no machines making noise. Only wind and animals guarding their territory. Their ears were sharp, their bodies ready to run. When they stepped on wet soil or near rivers that overflowed, their footprints might have vanished within hours. Yet some were covered by sediment at the perfect moment, sealed by clay, and locked in earth that turned to stone over millions of years. Like a message accidentally preserved by nature for a future they could never imagine. This quiet moment flows like gentle air around you. You are not reading a story of famous figures or great events recorded in human history. You are touching a story that never demanded to be understood. A story that did not care if it would ever be found. On this long journey you will soon follow. You will see a world without words, but rich with life driven by pure instinct. You are invited to forget everything you know for a moment and let curiosity guide you across empty spaces once filled by the earliest steps of beings without names. So relax, stay comfortable. Let your eyes grow a little heavier. You do not need to remember every detail. Simply allow yourself to feel close to a time so distant when Earth was wild and life was simple. There will be mystery beside you throughout this story, a mystery never fully answered. Perhaps it never needed to be. Sometimes it is enough to understand that before humans gave names to everything, the world already existed and lived in its own way. Imagine the very first night when early humans discovered that footprints could last longer than their own breath. The sky was filled with stars that had no names yet, and the night wind carried the wet scent of freshly fallen rain. A young hunter walked across the soft earth near a shallow river. The ground was still damp and clung to the soles of his feet. He did not think about the tracks he left behind. For him, each step was simply a step to find food or avoid danger. Yet beneath all that, the ground beneath him was preparing a surprise for the distant future. He paused for a moment. He stared at the moon, reigning alone in the sky, and he never knew that the shadow of his body cast upon the mud would become one of the earliest pieces of the world's memory. No one knows why that mud suddenly hardened hours later. Maybe the water receded faster than usual. Maybe the wind carried dust from the mountains and covered its surface. Maybe the earth was trying to remember the first human who dared to walk alone in the dark. In that silence, his footprints slowly dried. Every curve of his soul and every tiny line in his skin were carved by nature. He never looked back. There was no reason to look at a step he just placed. He only moved forward and forward because walking was the only way humans survived before names existed. Across the river, another being stepped, leaving a much larger track. Heavy steps, like thunder pressing onto the soil. A giant creature covered in dark fur watched the small one from afar. The young human never realized he was walking beside a giant that could end him with a single strike of claws. Yet no one chased that night and no one ran. They simply left marks of their existence on the same ground. Two species that never spoke, yet both part of a story remembered millions of years later. Their prints lay side by side. When both disappeared into the morning mist, the earth sealed the story tightly. Rain came and went. Rivers rose and fell. Seasons changed until the place became a wide plain, then became limestone hills. The prints buried beneath did not move at all. Slowly the ground above turned to stone, preserving the story until the world was ready to read it again. The hunters never knew their steps did not truly vanish. The giant never knew its mark would become a riddle for future minds. When modern humans finally discovered the prints, they frowned. A small human track beside that of a giant, as if they walked together, as if they once shared a moment in time. Yet scientists remain unsure. Maybe the prints were made in different years. Maybe the giant passed long after the human had gone. Maybe what seems obvious is just a trick of time imprisoned in rock. The stone does not answer. It remains quiet, holding a truth that prefers silence. Those footprints awaken a strange question inside anyone who sees them. Did we once walk alongside beings now lost to stories? Are we truly the only rulers of this world, or merely one of many players now gone? The footprints shrink human pride and replace it with wonder. The stone speaks a language translated only through curiosity. That is the beginning of all great questions in history. When humans realize that the world keeps evidence of things unseen but still real. Those prints remind us that before writing, before stories, before names, humans had only the earth as their witness. Each step was the first word ever spoken to the world. Every track was a confession that they existed. They walked. They breathed. They hoped to be found even after their breath faded with the darkness of their last night. There was a time when numbered years did not exist and no mind had conceived the idea of a calendar. The world was measured only by the slow shifting of seasons. Cold winds arrived from the north carrying thin fog that clung to large stones scattered across a wide valley. In a place now known as East Africa, the dry soil cracked under the heat of day, while the night air cut through bone with its chill. A group of beings lived there, walking upright like us, though they had no words to describe themselves. No tribe names, no titles, just a cluster of wanderers who followed animals and springs that appeared and vanished as they pleased. Ancient mountains watched from afar, their peaks veiled in gray clouds. Rivers flowed freely with no bridges, no dams. The grasslands moved gently as though the earth itself breathed. The sunrise glowed red like embers losing their flame. At night, the sky was full of lights that seemed eager to speak. Yet no one understood what stars were trying to say. They lived without history, without records, without stories repeated through generations. Each day carried only one purpose, which was survival. Anything unseen did not exist. Even so, small traces within their hearts began to hold memories. They did not know how to call that past forward. They simply kept it silently. The first idea of time crept into their thoughts like a seed growing slow. The world was still a blank book, leaving soft footprints on wet soil that would dry and disappear. Imagine a morning so quiet that your own breath feels like the loudest sound on earth. There were no flocks of lively birds, only distant cries of unseen animals, reminding them of the vast and dangerous world around. These early beings woke from the hard ground, protected only by dry branches and grass arranged loosely to keep their bodies from the cold earth. They woke not because of time, but because of the faint light slipping beneath their eyelids. The sun did not tell them the hour. It only suggested that movement must begin. Their footprints pressed into the soil, softened by rain. Every step was proof of their existence, though they never realized its importance. Without language, they could not say that they existed, but the earth quietly recorded them. As the morning wind carried the smell of wet soil and fallen leaves from old trees, they walked with no clear destination. Their instincts guided them, a force older than memory itself. Their eyes stayed alert. A single shift of grass might mean food or threat. No place was truly safe. The world remained wild, with creatures larger, faster, and fiercer than them. Even so, a quiet wonder appeared whenever they gazed at the horizon stretching without end. They did not know they were part of a long story just beginning. Yet, with each footprint left behind, the future was already waiting to discover them. In those days, the world had no names. Each hill was simply a large mound of earth. Each river just water flowing without needing a title. The sky had no specific term for its colors. It changed freely, sometimes pale like bone, sometimes red like pooled blood, and sometimes pitch black as if angry at anyone who stared too long. In this nameless world, these early humans became beings who slowly started to think beyond survival. Though they did not truly understand what was growing inside their minds, the stones around them kept traces of even more ancient life. There were faint scratches like claw marks and large depressions as if left by something unimaginably heavy. They walked past them without concern, because to them such things were simply parts of the world that had always been there. Yet for us, millions of years later, every mark feels like a hidden message. As if something once roamed the same ground, then vanished before words existed to explain it. These early humans never looked back while walking. Not because they wished to forget the past, but because they did not know the past could be kept. For them, each day was the first day. Every step leaving a trace on the ground would soon disappear in the wind. But a few would dry, harden, and wait until someone far in the future tried to imagine what kind of life once pressed into this wild earth. Sunrise was never a precise signal of time for them. It simply appeared, offering light when needed, then disappeared without warning. These early humans awoke when their bodies had enough rest and moved only when hunger squeezed their stomachs. There was no concept of morning or night in their minds, only light and darkness taking turns without needing names. Their thick, rough skin felt the cold winds that still carried the scent of ancient soil. They picked fruits from bushes with no names and chewed slowly, surprised only when the taste turned too bitter to be trusted. At the riverbank, where the water still held the memory of long-faded ice, they crouched and drank straight from the moving current. Sometimes they stared a little too long, wondering what creature stared back from the surface. Curiosity quickly flickered out because there were no words to keep it alive. Among tall trees standing like petrified giants, they wandered without direction. They were not searching for a goal, merely searching for existence. When night arrived, the cold descended along with uncertainty. They gathered together, communicating only through eyes and small movements. A distant roar made them stare into the overwhelming dark. They did not know what creature made that sound, only that the world was never as safe as the fire they were still learning to understand. Sleep arrived like an uninvited visitor, and new life waited behind eyes not yet capable of grasping dreams. One late afternoon, when the wind fell silent and nameless birds stopped chirping, the ground trembled softly as if it were drawing a long breath. The early humans froze, turning their heads slowly toward the source of the steady vibration that beat like the heart of the earth. Trees rubbed against one another, leaves falling before their time. In the distance appeared a creature so enormous that the sky itself seemed to step aside. Its skin looked like moss-covered stone, and its feet carved deep impressions into the soil. Impressions that would harden into stone footprints millions of years later. They had no name for this creature, but fear was already a language. The giant moved unhurried, its head rising high between ancient branches. Each step made the small human group gather close, their chests rising and falling without a single sound escaping. They stared as if witnessing a dream too real to understand. No one tried to run, because instinct whispered that safety existed only in stillness. When the giant briefly turned its head, its gaze swept over them as if they were no more important than small grass waving at its feet. When it finally walked away, they remained frozen. Time passed slowly. Only after its shadow disappeared fully did they finally draw the breaths they had been holding. There were no words to explain what they had seen, but their bodies remembered. Fear turned into knowledge. The knowledge flowed without the need for sound. In the distance, the ancient wind still circles like a secret refusing to be spoken, and at the same time the sky appears endlessly vast, carrying the glimmer of stars that once touched a world so young. Before all those memories turned into stone and quiet dust, waiting in silence for millions of years, never asking to be explained by anyone, because the world then did not know the question of who or what, since there was only existence, calm and simple, flowing toward a direction never questioned by the first beings who walked upon the land, still warm from the fire of creation that had only just softened from its violent birth, and they placed their feet on a surface soft like wet clay, and every step left a clear imprint. The length, the width, and its thickness, suggesting a strength of body beyond our current imagination. The beings walked forward without a destination, yet never lost, because nature was still a blank sheet without borders, and every line of life could appear simply from a single unintentional step, and each footprint then froze in time, carved into the earth, buried by layers that kept piling, as if the world itself intended to hide them, until humans arrived with an insatiable curiosity, digging with hands full of ambition, trying to discover answers about an existence that perhaps even those first beings never wondered, since they lived like air that never asks why. It moves they only existed in a journey without end, in a silence that was not frightening, but calming, without name, without story, only natural movement following the gentle rhythm of the earth, pulsing with life, every breath, every step, every vibration, becoming witness to an age that could not remember itself, and in that simplicity there lies a deeper mystery than any puzzle created by modern minds that demand reasons for everything, while many things at the dawn of life needed no reason to occur. They simply flowed like a river, unaware of which sea it would reach, and here the first footprints keep silent, becoming the oldest record that life once walked upon a newly awakened earth, gazing at a sky not yet filled with questions, and within all that the world secretly holds memories that echo, though no voice recites them, and we can only guess while closing our eyes, feeling the passing wind carrying messages from a time too distant to recall, yet too real to ignore. The footprints that remained carry shapes we can never fully comprehend, because every curve at their edges, every hollow at their center, and every pressure that pushed through the soft, ancient ground is like a message written by beings who never imagined that someday their steps would become the only evidence of their existence, and humans not yet born in that distant era would later come to stare at them with endless curiosity, and scientists would try to measure the distance between each step to determine whether the creature walked with long legs or had a lower body supported by strong arms balancing its movement, and they would argue about the true form of the body, because these footprints are puzzles refusing to reveal the entire story, and the world seems to enjoy the confusion that always follows any ancient discovery rising from cracked earth. Researchers would then draw imaginary lines over the hardened stone, attempting to match missing pieces with what remains, until finally they must accept that many things from the past are too distant to ever be explained, and the harder one tries, the more it feels like reaching for mist, disappearing upon touch, only to reappear somewhere else, as if the past plays hide and seek with our thoughts, because perhaps not everything wishes to be found. Maybe some stories feel more at home in darkness than forced into the light that insists everything must have a clear definition. While these first beings never needed a definition to be real, they simply lived, following instincts that required no words. And their footprints stand as the most honest proof of a life that never sought significance, yet left marks that outlast human monuments of pride that will someday crumble and vanish like dust scattered into the wind, and no one will care anymore. And here we are now staring at a footprint that stays frozen even when its owner has long disappeared, swallowed by time, and we can only sit, guessing the direction they walked while realizing they never intended to leave any message for anyone, and those prints were mere accidents that became the most loyal witnesses of lives that never expected to be spoken of by intelligent beings millions of years later, trying to assemble a missing puzzle but unable to discard any piece because each fragment holds a story the Earth refuses to forget. Imagine an evening that no longer exists in this world, an evening where the sun did not shine too strongly yet, did not set too quickly, and the sky above those first beings carried a deeper color than the sky we see today, as if the air of that time still held secrets it refused to release, and the large stones forming the ground under their steps kept warmth longer, as though the heat of the earth was feeding a planet still learning to breathe, and the scattered rocks stretched as far as the eye could see, with small gaps where ancient rainwater might have slept for thousands of years without ever evaporating, because nature was not in a hurry, and every footfall carved a deeper mark than any modern human footprint, perhaps because their bodies were heavier, or the ground was softer, or both, working together to create grooves that would outlast the destiny of any creature that walked above them. And these beings walked without hurry, not chased by time, because time in that age had not yet become an enemy that forces life to run faster, and around them grew low plants with sturdy stems that no longer exist in the same form today. We only find fossils or faint genealogies left inside the DNA of modern plants that changed with each generation, adapting to eras that never asked permission. And far away, the sound of flowing water echoed like a song that the planet composed for itself, not for listeners, because no ears had evolved to interpret the message flowing over black stones. Born from the Earth's deep interior, some other beings might have been walking nearby, not as friends, not as foes, simply as life coexisting in a period too young to hold written history, yet too old to be easily understood by minds that demand certainty, while certainty did not yet exist, and the dark yet warm sky stored breezes, carrying the scent of wet soil and moss, lifted by rivers, swelling in seasons that could not be counted because there was no calendar to record when the water began to rise or fall, and these first beings simply walked, maybe seeking food, maybe shelter, or maybe movement itself was the only instinct the world had granted them. Since the earth had not asked anything to stay still for long, and when one of them paused to look ahead, perhaps it saw something important to its instinct, a meaning we could never translate. And from that moment, the direction of their trail curved, slightly more deliberate, as if a sudden purpose grew inside a body guided only by survival. And when that pattern eventually became visible millions of years later, we who stared at it pretended to understand as if it were left for us to decode, though it could simply be coincidence, or perhaps coincidence itself is a tool nature uses to keep humans guessing questions that never had answers. And that evening faded slowly, the light dimming while the footprints hardened clearer still as the ground dried, sealing every detail. Like a giant hand protecting a secret, and night finally fell, and everything that moved now slept without dreams, while the earth kept a new memory pressed into its surface, ready to endure through countless ages that would come. In the middle of this silent expanse, there is a depression that appears different from the rest. Its shape is elongated, like the imprint of a creature that walked with a steadier stride. It is not particularly large, yet not small either. The surrounding stones show patterns of cracks, as if caused by heavy, repeated steps at the same point. Some believe this mark was not only made by pressure, but also suggests a creature once stopped here long enough to observe something, or maybe to wait for a separated member of its group. That idea rises in the mind of anyone who looks closely. The stone becomes a quiet stage for imagination to move slowly without sound. Perhaps there was once soft morning light shining on an ancient body with gentle golden color. They gazed at the horizon, unaware that the future would freeze their existence into a vague story. Scientists measured the depth of the imprint, bringing modern tools and research papers while discussing endlessly. They can only guess, never fully knowing what happened in that time. No writing, no witness, no record was left behind to explain who they were or why they existed here. There remains only the shape of a foot embedded in solid rock that endured longer than the species who created it. In its long silence, the stone acts like a guardian of secrets that cannot be forced to speak. The passing wind tries to deliver messages from the past, but humans cannot truly understand it. They only hear a repeated whisper fading into time. Some say the footprints may belong to a creature who once walked upright with curiosity, almost like humans. Yet no evidence strongly supports that thought. There is merely a longing to discover distant relatives who might have inhabited the world long before people arrived. The world then might have been drastically different from today. Forests could have stretched endlessly, and water may have flowed clear between stone cliffs now barren. Prehistoric animals likely wandered searching for safety, while the creatures of these prints moved further, guided by instincts we do not comprehend. Time flowed, and all of it vanished from the surface of Earth. The imprint, however, remains planted firmly on stone, refusing to be forgotten. Each sunrise reveals its form, clearly linking the modern world to an unreachable era for a brief moment. No sound echoes here, only long silence and the shadow of steps that once pressed soft ground into hardened history. If someone stands right upon the print, they might sense a faint tremor from a time long gone. Perhaps only imagination, or perhaps a sign that memory never fully disappears. It simply waits for someone patient and sincere enough to listen to the story buried in stone. Not far from the long print lies a set of markings that look more erratic, as if the one who made them moved without a clear direction. The tracks overlap, then break, then reappear, as though the creature was searching for something dropped, or perhaps simply playing in a silence only they understood. Researchers observe its irregular shape and assume this individual might have been younger or simply more restless. Each small depression suggests a lighter step, not strong enough to press deeply into the once soft ground before it. Turned to stone through a process we never witnessed. Modern humans can only imagine whether the creature was looking at the sky, studying insects passing by, or following a path born from its own simple thoughts. All possibilities remain unanswered. Time turns those tracks into fragments of a story without a finished narration. No sound accompanied their motion, no words explained their purpose. The only clear thing is that these footprints were once part of a life that roamed freely in a world without boundaries or names for anything at all. If someone touches one of the tiny cracked surfaces, they might sense how the earth that was once soft has become cold and solid. The change happens slowly, watched by countless nights and seasons arriving and leaving unannounced. Each mineral layer that preserves these markings holds a portion of the past, resisting the shifting pressure of the earth. People attempt imaginative reconstructions of the creature. Who made them what their bodies were like? Whether they laughed, whether they feared like humans, or moved only by instinct, without thought, beyond survival. These questions transform this simple trace into something far greater than it appears. It is not only an imprint, but a tangible clue that unknown life once thrived here. Sunset reveals its texture as shadows sink into the depth of each mark, creating a contrast that awakens curiosity. Humans feel a desire to understand the origin of themselves, and footprints such as these compel them to keep searching and hoping for a link between the present and the nearly forgotten ancient world. The wind returns, carrying grains of sand that dance briefly in the air, then settle, gently, as if trying to protect the secret a little longer. Anyone who observes the prints may feel a strange sensation slowly rising, a blend of awe and emptiness, as if witnessing something that once existed yet now survives only as a faint memory within the earth. Nobody knows whether the creature ever returned to this place, or if this was the final time their steps touched a world that eventually moved on without them. The prints endure to speak through their form and silence, telling that even the simplest existence deserves remembrance, despite having no voice and no name. In another part of the same rocky plain, scientists found larger footprints spaced more regularly, as if made by a being walking with strong certainty. The trail follows a straight line, suggesting the creature knew its destination, although we will never know what it sought. Each impression appears deeper, as though the body that made it was heavy or supported by powerful limbs bearing the weight of existence. Standing beside the mark, one might feel the presence that once passed here, still lingering in imagination, attempting to reconstruct. A moment from millions of years ago, when this place was not silent as it is now. When the ground was soft, the creature left its trace without considering that modern humans would one day gaze upon it with curiosity. Surrounding the prints, layers of hardened earth showed geological records of time passing, every season, every rainfall, slowly wearing the edges until they nearly vanished, yet survived enough to be recognized as signs of life. No sound was ever recorded, no spoken stories remain about the being, yet each indentation becomes a script without letters. Humans translate it using science and an unavoidable touch of imagination. Was the creature walking toward water or following a herd? Was it fleeing danger or simply traveling like animals? Today, following the rhythm of nature. No signs of struggle remain, no bones or remains nearby, only tracks that move far into the distance, then disappear at the fractured edge of the stone. The question remains whether the being continued its path far beyond, or whether it became trapped in some ancient event that altered the world. The wind glides over the surface, leaving a chill that touches the skin of anyone who approaches, making them feel as though they are observing life from another realm. At dusk, shadows stretch across the marks, merging with the growing darkness, showing how something so small and human. Eyes can still leave a deep impression of the past. Archaeologists debate quietly, minds colliding between fact and possibility. Some believe the maker of the large footprints was a protector, a leader guiding others toward safety. Others imagine a solitary wanderer following no one. Both may be true, or neither could be close to reality. The ancient world is too silent to explain itself, and humans are too curious to stop questioning. In every large step, researchers find hope that they are following a narrative given directly by the Earth. As if the Earth speaks through these shapes, telling that any existence that ever walked here will not be entirely forgotten. With no name, no face, no voice, their history remains pressed into the stone, proving that time does not erase life. It only changes its form into memories waiting to be found and recognized by those who come far in the future. Not far from their smaller footprints were found following behind the larger ones with a gap that was neither too near nor too far. One can imagine the relationship that might have existed between the big steps and the small ones. These tiny impressions were shallower, but their spacing showed a clear rhythm, as if imitating or keeping a safe distance. Perhaps it was a child, perhaps another creature driven by curiosity. The ancient world offers no solid clues, but human imagination always rushes to fill the gaps. Sometimes the wind blew fine dust across the prints, softening their edges, but their forms remained recognizable. Anyone looking closely might feel as though the prints were a message, nearly erased, yet still fighting to remain. If the two sets of footprints belonged to companions traveling together, one might picture moments of loyalty that were never heard as they moved across a vast land filled with a scent of metallic wet soil and the distant calls of prehistoric animals. Perhaps the small ones sometimes hurried to match the rhythm, then slowed again, tired or distracted by something that no longer exists in this world. Researchers measuring the depth of the prints noted that the smaller being had a much lighter body and gentler movement. Each indentation showed evenly distributed pressure, as if walking carefully to avoid making sounds that might alert predators. The ancient world was filled with danger, and fear was always part of life. Yet this small trail showed courage in its simplest form, the courage of following something much larger than itself. At sunrise, the prints reflected thin light, making their lines clearer before fading again as the sun climbed high. The light gave the impression that the footprints were still alive, as if they had been made only moments ago. In the silence of endless time, humans forget that what they see is the result of a journey never witnessed. Every small footprint becomes another door to new questions. What would they say if they could speak? Did they warn each other of danger or offer comfort simply by being there? Was the small one following out of trust or fear? No answer can be given by silent stone. Yet humans can sense a bond unrecorded in fossils, seen only in walking patterns that never lie. A story of voiceless companionship painted on the earth. A story waiting for someone patient enough to read it. These small prints make scientists pause before continuing their analysis, because they know prehistoric life was not only about survival, but also about the quiet bonds that strengthen these beings even though their existence is long buried in untouched history. In front of the cave that still holds the moist scent of a time no one can remember, I stand observing the patterns of footprints that seem to tell a story without a single word. Every curve pressed into the stone feels like a sentence written by something that once lived, then disappeared without leaving a name behind. Around the cave, pale green moss looks as if it has served as a silent witness to the long journey of Earth passing through sleepless ages. The wind slips through narrow gaps in the rock with a gentle motion, like it is combing the hair of ancient stone, reminding anyone watching that this place is not merely an empty space, but a page from a history book that has yet to be fully read. The shadows of the tall trees outside move slowly as the sunlight shifts, forming patterns like ancient beings dancing quietly. It is entirely possible that these footprints belong to creatures who walked differently, perhaps more carefully, perhaps more aware of the ground beneath them. Researchers continue to debate their origin. Some say they were left by the first humans, now almost forgotten. Some believe they belonged to beings older than our imagination, yet no one truly knows. Droplets of water fall from the ceiling of the cave, one by one, creating a peaceful rhythm that invites anyone listening to drift into curiosity and fall asleep with unanswered questions. Anyone who stays long enough might imagine the echoes of ancient footsteps still traveling between the stone walls, even though those steps ended long ago. This place slows down time and allows imagination to take over to reveal a life once lived here. Tonight, when darkness replaces the light, the footprints will appear even clearer because mystery sometimes chooses to show itself only to those who watch in silence and do not demand answers. In a valley not far from the cave, there is a wide stone plain, like a field prepared long ago for large ancient steps. The footprints there appear shallower, yet spread far and wide, showing erratic movement as if those beings once ran, then suddenly stopped, maybe because something startled them, or maybe they were simply playing under a primeval sky that hung lower than the one we know today. The clouds move slowly, as if following the storyline left behind among the stones, while a soft breeze continues to carry the scent of soil that has dried for millions of years. On some of the larger rocks, there are strange markings that resemble claws, yet look too organized to belong to any wild animal known to us. The markings seem intentionally made so that anyone who sees them cannot stop guessing what might have happened here. Archaeologists who come to study the site often exchange theories in the quiet moments, yet none of them dare to state absolute truth. Each one of them feels like they are reading a book with missing pages, trying to piece together clues that are most likely wrong. The sky slowly shifts from pale blue to golden hues, creating a feeling that the heart is far away from modern life, as if every breath is a thin connection to beings that no longer exist. At the edge of the valley, there is a narrow opening leading toward a dark forest. like a doorway urging imagination to step further and ask whether those beings left because something unexpected emerged from there. Every day at dusk, sunlight strikes the footprints from a low angle, making stretched shadows appear like giant legs still walking in silence. That might be why this place creates a strange sense of uneasiness, not fear, but an awareness that time has not finished telling its story. In the quietest nights, when no wind passes and no birds sing, one can easily imagine those steps returning, pressing into the earth slowly like creatures reluctant to awaken the world from its long sleep. At the center of the stone plain lies a large elongated boulder that appears as if it once served as a resting place for beings whose origins we cannot trace. The upper surface of the rock is smoother than its sides, as though it was frequently touched by something with soft skin or perhaps a different type of body than any creature known today. On one side, a small depression exists, roughly the size of a human palm, yet too deep to be formed by gentle pressure. No one knows whether it was part of a ritual, the result of centuries of sitting, or a sign that ancient beings had habits beyond imagination. Some researchers spend hours observing its texture, attempting to uncover a storyline hidden within its natural carvings. Occasionally, the wind slips through a gap beneath the stone and creates a faint whispering sound, as if the rock is speaking in a language that history never recorded. Around its base, tiny moss patches persist despite the dryness of the soil, raising questions about hidden sources of life beneath the surface. Visitors during daytime often describe a subtle sensation when touching the boulder, a light vibration traveling through their fingers, reminding them that every ancient object carries memories invisible to the eye. When the sun stands directly overhead, the rock casts almost no shadow, giving the illusion that it is floating weightlessly above the ground. At other times, as the sun slowly sinks, its shadow stretches outward like a guiding pillar toward a line of footprints in the east. These details make observers feel that this place is not simply a product of nature, but a stage once filled with life unrecorded in any textbook. The stone stands in quiet, humble guard, refusing to disturb, yet refusing to let secrets slip away. Those who stay overnight near the plain often dream of a faint light flowing from the gap beneath the rock, sliding toward the footprints just to disappear before being followed. No one knows whether this is merely the tired mind playing or a hidden message from a time locked away long before words existed. The great stone remains there, waiting for anyone patient enough to read a story without a title, without recognizable characters, and without a certain ending. Not far from the elongated stone, a wide depression lies in the ground, its shape so precise that it becomes difficult to believe it is only the result of natural erosion. The surface sinks in a perfect circle, the edges rising slightly higher than the center, like a massive bowl that once held something long forgotten. When the rare rain falls during unpredictable seasons, water gathers inside but never lingers. It is as though the earth absorbs every drop to keep something hidden beneath. Some speculate that a short-lived sea may have formed and disappeared within hours. Others imagine it as a gathering place for ancient beings who never needed words. They might have stood facing one another, understanding everything in complete silence. Faint circular scratch marks line the edges, hinting at repeated steps taken through unknown years. As the sun leans westward, shadows within the depression resemble a gaping mouth waiting for something to return. At night, a few travelers claim to hear distant footsteps whose rhythm does not match any living creature today. Slow and steady footsteps, circling endlessly, though no figure is ever seen. Birds that fly overhead sometimes change their course abruptly, as if refusing to pass directly above it. Even the wind seems hesitant, drifting along the edges of the circle before crossing the space at its heart. All these natural behaviors make people wonder whether below the depression lies a vast cavity, once used as shelter or a meeting place from a time before history learned to write. Its every inch feels like a map with the legend removed, while the sky above watches a past that continues replaying itself. Something waits to be discovered, yet insists that its clues remain bound to secrecy. Researchers often lose track of time observing it, realizing too late that the sun has shifted far from where it was. In that unnoticed span, a story might have tried to surface, only to sink back into silence. No one knows whether the depression is a remnant of a great event or a reminder that its former inhabitants understood the earth more deeply than we do now. It remains as a question without a clear answer, waiting for those who are unafraid to look at what cannot be seen. To the east of this plain stands a cluster of stones arranged in a pattern that does not feel entirely random. The stones stretch upward like slabs planted into the earth, some leaning in the same direction, while others stand together like a gathering of silent beings. When touched, their surfaces feel smoother than the rocks nearby, as if countless hands had rubbed them over ages. Subtle grooves follow faint curves, not clear carvings, but more like memories of shapes that once stood before them. At sunrise, the shadows cast by the stones stretch toward a specific point on the horizon, as though pointing to a direction that once held great meaning. On certain nights filled with stars, witnesses report that the stones vibrate ever so slightly, reacting to the starlight that falls upon them. There is no sound, yet a delicate pressure reaches the skin, making heartbeats align with some unknown rhythm. The grass growing between them appears darker, as if storing a secret it refuses to share. Animals avoid the center, circling the formation rather than crossing through it. Researchers tried measuring the distances between each stone, hoping to decode a mathematical pattern, although answers remain elusive. The layout feels too deliberate to be random, but too ambiguous to be considered intentional engineering. On the ground, small impressions shaped like elongated palms press into the hardened earth, suggesting limbs with functions different from those of modern human hands. The depth of the impressions implies great weight or density from beings that once passed here. Wind slipping through the stones carries the scent of ancient soil rising from hidden cracks, a scent hinting that this place was once warm, though now surrounded by cold silence. One traveler claimed that when he stood at the exact center, at dawn, he glimpsed a large shadow with a long neck crossing the sunrise before vanishing the moment he blinked. He never knew whether it was imagination or a reflection of prehistoric memory leaking through the stones. No one knows why the stones are here, who arranged them, or what message their shape is meant to hold. They remain standing like guardians of time, refusing to allow anyone to fully grasp the truth they protect. Among the grass surrounding the stones lies a fading trail shaped by steps long lost to time. It does not run straight, but curves and wanders as if guided by instinct rather than calculation. The earth on this trail feels harder than the soil around it, forming a shallow groove that holds the sensation of standing on a memory that refuses to disappear. The trail leads toward a gentle cliff covered in dark moss and narrow-leafed plants emerging from cracks in the rock. The cliff acts as a barrier, separating this place from another world, as though something waits behind its still surface. There is a narrow fissure on the cliff, marked with symmetrical grooves, too precise to be credited to natural erosion alone. Seen up close, these grooves resemble rib-like patterns running the length of a large creature, or perhaps a trace, of sound waves once echoing within a cavern, now sealed shut. When wind breathes through the fissure, a soft whisper can be heard like a long sigh rising from deep beneath the earth. Not frightening, but reminiscent of something that has slept for ages. Explorers who approach the fissure claim to feel faint tremors beneath their feet, as if something heavy walked far below, though the surface remains still. Scattered near the trail are small stone fragments darker than any rock nearby, with a subtle glimmer as if containing minerals that no longer exist in the modern age. One shard is long and pointed, almost the length of a human arm, and feels unexpectedly heavy when lifted. It may have been a weapon or hunting tool for the beings that once used this trail, or maybe a piece of their own body, perhaps a nail or horn broken during an attempt to reach safety. The trail abruptly ends at a shallow depression too small to swallow a large creature, yet deep enough to hold rainwater through the cold seasons. The water is unusually dark, yet still clear, reflecting a past that the ground refuses to release. Staring into it too long could reveal shifting shapes belonging to something not here, yet still tethered to this world by the traces left in stone, earth, and wind. This place is waiting for someone to read its story again, though the story will never be complete because time keeps walking, erasing just enough to keep the truth hidden. At the edge of the plain stands a natural stone formation resembling a gate. Two tall pillars rising upright with enough space for a large creature to pass through, yet feeling intimate to modern humans. The stone surfaces are rough, but at certain points, curved lines appear, almost like scratches or claws from beings that once inhabited this place. When the sun reaches a particular height, light passes through the gap between the stones, casting a long beam directly onto a smaller stone located a few meters ahead. The small stone appears plain, yet upon closer inspection, subtle depressions resemble giant footprints frozen in time. No one knows who left these marks, whether it was a prehistoric creature from thousands of years ago or a symbolic trace meant to warn generations that followed. Wind passing through the gate produces a faint whisper, as though someone from an unknown era is speaking. A sound impossible to translate, yet strangely compelling. On either side of the gate, moss grows in patterns that seem to mark paths once traveled by ancient beings, blending seamlessly with the surrounding earth and stone. Researchers observing these patterns attempt to interpret whether they align with the movement of stars or the sun's position, but the results remain ambiguous, as if nature itself wishes to keep its secrets. On certain nights, when the sky is dark and stars seem near, the silhouette of the gate frames part of the sky, and some believe the formation once served as a marker of time or direction for beings now gone. The footprints on the smaller stone illuminated by the gate's light appear to direct attention toward a small valley shrouded in mist, a valley inaccessible to ordinary human feet without assistance. The mist moves slowly, as if guarding the secrets within from view. Even the sound of water or wind through the valley is softer than elsewhere, giving the impression that every element here is governed by a rhythm unlike the modern world. Those attempting to approach the valley often feel time slow and their steps grow heavy, not due to the terrain, but an unseen pull from the past. Every stone, every curve, every footprint forms a narrative never written, one only readable by those patient enough to experience this world without haste. The stone gate stands silently, yet not passively, waiting for someone to understand that the life once present here left messages in unusual forms. Messages decipherable only by those willing to see beyond the surface. Near the mist-shrouded valley, the ground slopes gently, covered with a layer of soil mixed with fine sand and ancient minerals. The soil looks distinct from its surroundings, darker and more moist, as if holding memories that have fallen into it over thousands of years. Along the slope, small stones appear deliberately arranged. Some form straight lines pointing to specific spots, while others lie scattered, yet still convey a certain rhythm that is difficult to explain. Each stone has a different texture, some smooth, some rough, some faintly glimmering under the morning light. Observers believe these stones may have served as markers or pathways, yet no record explains their purpose, leaving imagination to fill the void. Wild plants grow between the stones, some unknown species, their leaves and stems unlike modern flora, giving the sense that this place operates on its own tempo. In the middle of the slope lies a small depression, always filled with rainwater. Yet the water remains clear, seemingly rejecting dirt or mud. Many believe the basin may have served as shelter or a water source for prehistoric beings during heavy rains. Yet its size is too small for ordinary use. At its edge, faint footprints appear, varying in size. Some large and elongated, some small and almost hand-like, though not entirely human. The prints are embedded in the soil, frozen over time, waiting for someone to observe and understand their rhythm. As night falls and the mist thickens, moonlight penetrates the fog, reflecting on stone and water surfaces, creating a soft glow that is soothing yet evokes deep curiosity. The sound of passing wind feels like a whisper. Not words to be understood, but subtle vibrations affecting breathing and steps of anyone on the slope. Small animals avoid this area, moving around stones and tall grass as if sensing something invisible but crucial to the balance of this place. It is possible that in ancient times, the beings who left these traces used the slope and basin as orientation points, navigating with remarkable precision. Every element here, stones, soil, plants, water, and air seems interconnected, potentially revealing the rhythm of undocumented prehistoric life, if understood. Those attempting to record their experiences here often find words inadequate, as every detail calls the observer to pause, to feel and merge with the hidden history. The slope remains calm, silent, yet speaks in a language only readable by those willing to look without hurry, listen without forcing, and touch without haste. At the end of the slope lies a small cave, its surface covered with moss and creeping plants, almost blending perfectly with the surroundings, making it difficult to notice except for those who truly observe. The cave entrance appears as a semicircular opening, large enough for a medium-sized creature to pass through, yet intimate and protective. When evening light strikes the entrance, the shadows form as if a great mouth ready to swallow anyone approaching, yet the surrounding silence makes it more soothing than frightening. Inside, the soil is damp and small stones are scattered without obvious pattern, yet some show scratches forming straight or curved lines, as if someone or something once marked a path or left a message in a language now lost. The air within feels cooler, yet not piercing. A unique stillness holds its breath for thousands of years, safeguarding secrets not to be shared lightly. Visitors who have entered report feeling subtle vibrations in the floor, not from earthquakes or external noise, but seemingly originating from deep within the earth, or perhaps from ancient memories embedded in the stones themselves. In one corner, a natural basin always filled with rainwater reflects not only shadows, but the passage of time. Gazing too long into the water merges the mist or rocks outside with one's own reflection, creating a sensation of standing between past and present. Surrounding footprints frame the entrance. Some resemble human souls, but are too long or wide for ordinary humans. Others look like claws or unknown animal tracks. When wind enters, a faint whisper is heard like a long exhale, not frightening, but a gentle greeting from the past. Every element within the cave stone, water, air, and lights interacts to form a calm yet captivating rhythm, inviting anyone who enters to pause and experience every detail slowly. This cave is not merely a physical space, but also a portal of imagination, where ancient history and the observer's experience meet in silence, creating an endless curiosity. Even upon leaving, visitors feel a part of themselves remains inside. Merged with stone and shadow, a piece of the story still waiting to be read again by eyes willing to look deeper. Around the cave entrance lies a flat expanse covered with fine gravel and small stones, some appearing to be fragments from larger rocks that had fallen or were intentionally moved by ancient beings. The gravel glimmers faintly under the morning sun, and stepping on it produces a soft crunch reminiscent of light steps that passed here thousands of years ago. Some larger stones protrude from the ground, their surfaces smoothly eroded by rain and wind, yet retaining lines that resemble symbolic patterns or simple geometric shapes. Nearby, faint tracks appear. Some resemble human soles, but longer and wider. Others like claws or unknown animal pads, all embedded in the soil as if wanting to tell a story long lost. The passing wind carries the gentle scent of wet earth, moss, and small fallen leaves from the surrounding creeping plants, creating a natural sensation that is calming yet evokes deep curiosity. As night falls, moonlight penetrates the thin fog above the ground, casting slowly moving shadows that create the illusion that the tracks themselves move. Like creatures that once walked and now remain only in stone and soil memory. Occasionally, soft, distant sounds can be heard, like a sigh or gentle exhale. Not explainable voices, but echoes from the past, blending with the night air. In this area, several unknown wild plants grow with thin, elongated leaves, sometimes shimmering under moonlight, giving the impression that this place lives by its own rhythm, distinct from the modern world. Every detail around the cave entrance and flat expanse forms an interconnected network of experience. Stones, soil, tracks, wind, and light interact, creating the sensation that this space holds time and memory. Visitors who have walked here often feel their steps become heavier or lighter depending on the direction. It's as if following an unseen prehistoric rhythm. Every element in this flat ground, from gravel to large stones, from footprints to wild plants, is part of a hidden narrative only readable by those patient enough to observe and absorb each element calmly and attentively. Although seemingly simple from the outside, this place contains the complexity of undocumented prehistoric life. Footprints frozen in stone and soil, waiting to be retold slowly and with reverence for the passage of time. A little further from the flat expanse lies a small stream flowing gently, its water clear and cold, reflecting the sky with a soothing tranquility. This stream divides the valley, forming a natural boundary and serving as a source of life for surrounding flora and fauna. The stones on the riverbed appear smooth from constant erosion, yet some bear unusual shapes, resembling figures or symbols seemingly crafted by unseen hands. Along the riverbank, footprints of varying sizes appear, some large and elongated, others small and almost hand-like, all seemingly framing the stream as a path once traveled by ancient beings. The water flows slowly, producing a gentle sound that blends with the sigh of wind along the slopes and the rustle of leaves, creating a natural symphony that makes anyone listening feel as if time slows. In several areas, creeping plants cover stones and soil, their dew-damp leaves softly reflecting light. At night, moonlight falls on the river's surface, creating reflections that seem to display shadows from the past, remaining footprints, and movements of unknown creatures. Observers sitting by the river sense a distinct rhythm, as if this environment has its own pulse, different from the modern world, preserving a history never recorded. Small animals appear cautiously along the bank, not disturbing the serenity, but rather enhancing the impression that this place lives in its own harmony. The river carries the scent of earth, moss, and ancient minerals, blending with the cool, moist air, reminding all that this place is a window into the past. On several large stones at the riverbank, depressions resembling giant handprints or claws appear, silent witnesses of long-vanished life. Though seemingly simple, the stream serves as a vital element connecting the entire landscape, from slopes and caves to flat expanses, forming a network of experiences that, if observed carefully, allows one to sense the hidden prehistoric rhythm. Every detail, from stones, flowing water, footprints, to the sound of wind and air, melds together to form a narrative never written, readable only by those willing to spend time listening with full attention. On the other side of the valley lies a vast meadow with grasses of varying heights, some reaching the knees, others only ankle high. The grass sways gently in the wind, creating waves that resemble a slow-moving green sea. Among the grass, small flowers bloom in soft hues: pale red, pale yellow, and white-adding subtle touches to the vast expanse. Occasionally, creeping plants emerge among the grass, forming irregular yet harmonious patterns, seemingly following an undocumented natural rhythm. Occasionally, small footprints appear in the soft soil. Most resemble unknown animal tracks, yet some look like ancient human soles, short yet thick, leaving traces meant to be remembered by those brave enough to look deeper. At the edge of the meadow, large trees rise with curved branches, some forming natural arches passable underneath, others creating perfectly shaded canopies. Small birds occasionally fly across the meadow, casting fleeting shadows on sunlit ground, creating moving patterns that seem to interact with the ancient footprints present. The scent of wet earth blends with the aroma of wildflowers and moss clinging to stones near the meadow, providing a calming sensation yet leaving curiosity about the life that once inhabited this place. As night falls, moonlight penetrates gaps between trees and grass, casting slowly moving shadows, as if the meadow has its own rhythm, following a pulse felt rather than seen. Occasionally, the wind sighs through the grass and trees, a soft sound rich with meaning for those who listen, as if signaling that this place lives in a long-established balance. Small animals emerge to drink from naturally formed pools, moving cautiously yet adding to the sense that every part of the meadow plays an important role in the network of prehistoric life. Every step, every gust of wind, and every rustle of leaves merges into an undocumented natural narrative, perceptible only to those willing to pause and immerse themselves in the rhythm present. This meadow, vast yet intimate, becomes a key element connecting the entire valley from caves, streams, slopes, to stones frozen in ancient footprints, creating a unified, profound experience for patient observers. Near the edge of the meadow stands a large rock protruding from the soil, its surface smooth, yet cracked in several places, seemingly holding secrets long hidden. The rock appears to have been a resting place for ancient wanderers, where they might sit to observe the surroundings, wait for changing light, or plan the next journey. On the surface, faint grooves are visible. Some form random patterns, others resemble lines or symbols perhaps understood by those who lived long before recorded history. The passing wind produces a soft sound as it touches the cracks and crevices, a sound that to sensitive observers feels like whispers from the past, reminding that this place holds stories deeper than the physical landscape. Around the rock, the soil is slightly damp, indicating the flow of water that once existed or traces of ancient activity. Grass and wild plants grow around it, creating a natural border between the rock and the vast meadow, yet allowing it to remain the focal point of visual and imaginative attention. Occasionally, shadows from nearby trees cover the rock, making the grooves appear to change shape as if the rock reacts to light and the passage of time. Some observers who have sat on the rock report a profound sense of calm, as if the stone absorbs unrest and replaces it with a slow, steady rhythm. Small birds occasionally perch upon it, reflecting morning sunlight on their feathers, enhancing the sense that this rock is a meeting point between life and the remaining time. The scent of wet soil mingles with moss and fallen leaves, adding to the sensation that the rock is part of a larger network of life, connecting the Meadow River Cave and the entire valley in a single natural rhythm. The sound of the nearby stream blends with the whispers of the wind and other natural sighs, creating an undocumented symphony that can only be felt. Every crack, groove, and shape on the rock becomes part of a narrative waiting to be interpreted by patient observers, linking the past with present experiences without words, solely through feeling and observation. This large rock, though silent, stands as a mute witness to the entire valley, holding stories within every pore and fracture, waiting to be read by those willing to spend time and quiet themselves to perceive every detail. Not far from the large rock lies ancient ruins, partially hidden by shrubs and wild plants. Collapsed walls and scattered bricks standing as silent witnesses of a lost civilization. The ruins have a vague form, yet clearly indicate a structure made by ancient humans, with foundations still sturdy in some areas and indentations suggesting spaces that may have been used for shelter or rituals. The soil around the ruins is damp and covered with soft green moss, giving the impression that nature has reclaimed much of the area, yet traces of civilization still linger in the air. Among the rubble, patterns resembling narrow paths or corridors appear, leading to areas now overgrown, seemingly holding secrets yet to be discovered. Some stones appear different in color, darker or smoother, evoking a sense that they held specific functions or were chosen with intent by ancient humans. The wind passing through the ruins carries soft sounds that blend with the rustle of leaves and the sighs of air from the valley, creating a calm yet curiosity-filled atmosphere. Occasionally, the calls of nocturnal animals add to the sensation that the place is still alive, even though humans no longer inhabit it. Observers who have ventured into the ruins report a feeling that each step follows patterns that have existed for thousands of years, and every stone touched seems to transmit vibrations from the past. Sunlight, filtering through gaps in the shrubs, casts shadows that shift over time, creating visual effects that seem to revive structures that once stood upright. The scent of soil, moss, and dry leaves blends together, giving anyone in the ruins the sense of entering another dimension, a space between the present and the past preserved in stone and soil. Every detail from cracked stones, collapsed walls to soil grooves and wild plants melds together to form an undocumented narrative, perceptible only to those willing to slow their pace and observe with patient attention. These ruins, though silent and enveloped by nature, testify to the presence of ancient humans and their forgotten lives, forming a bridge between the world that is past and the observations of the present. At the end of the ruins lies a narrow path leading up a hillside, a trail that appears seldom traveled, yet clearly formed by repeated steps of ancient beings. The path winds slowly following the contours of the land, occasionally cutting through shrubs and trees, and at certain points descending into small valleys that carry clear water from higher sources. The soil along this trail is damp and soft, leaving clear impressions for perceptive observers. marks that indicate the presence of large and small steps, possibly of ancient humans or animals that lived alongside them. Along the path, small stones are scattered, some seemingly arranged unnaturally, perhaps serving as markers or trail boundaries, and some standing prominently like mute witnesses of undocumented journeys. Wild plants creep between stones and soil, some with small flowers adding gentle color to the trail that, though quiet, pulses with the presence of flora and fauna. The sound of water from the valley is faint yet soothing, blending with the whispering wind through leaves, creating a soft, natural rhythm that invites curiosity. In certain spots, sunlight filters through leafy gaps, casting moving shadows that seem to guide the observer along the winding trail. Some ancient handprints and footprints appear faintly in the soil, partially covered by leaves and moss, seemingly waiting to be discovered and remembered by those willing to tread carefully. The scent of wet soil, moss, and fallen leaves mingles with the humid air, providing a deep sense of the prehistoric life that once existed along this path, connecting the observer with a rhythm older than recorded time. Every stone, footprint, and soil contour becomes part of a story undocumented, perceivable only through calm, attention, and patience. This narrow path, though simple in form, serves as a natural bridge linking the ruins, hills and valleys, allowing observers to sense the flow of history and life preserved in every inch of the soil. The presence of this trail reminds that even as time has long passed, every step recorded in the earth remains part of an eternal narrative waiting to be discovered and understood. At the end of the narrow path, the hillside opens into a vast valley where the late afternoon sunlight paints gold across the land and stones, creating a scene both tranquil and captivating. In this valley, a small river flows gently, winding through meadows and trees, its water soft and constant, seeming to be the pulse of nature guiding every observer's step. Along the riverbank, smooth, flat stones were used by ancient beings as temporary footholds or resting spots, each stone differing in color and texture, reflecting the passage of long-forgotten time. Grass grows lush around them, occasionally dotted with wildflowers that add subtle softness to the expansive landscape. Some ancient footprints and handprints appear faintly in the damp soil, partly covered by moss, while others remain clear, tangible evidence of life that once existed here. Birds fly low over the river, occasionally landing on stones, adding to the natural rhythm that enlivens the seemingly static yet dynamic scene. The scent of wet earth mingles with wildflowers and wood leaves, creating a natural sensation that connects observers to prehistoric life and the ever-continuing cycles of nature. As the sun begins to set, the light softens into gentle orange, casting long shadows of trees and stones across the ground, forming patterns that slowly shift with time, as if nature itself writes an undocumented story. Every detail from water ripples, leaf rustling, to ancient imprints in the soil melds into a narrative perceivable only through calm, observation, and patience. This valley, though silent, holds invisible life and history, offering a profound experience to anyone willing to notice every inch. The darkening sky brings a sense of peace while also leaving curiosity about the creatures and civilizations that once walked here, making the valley a silent witness of the past that continues to speak through its traces and the surrounding nature. In the deepest part of the valley, beyond hills and forgotten ruins, lies a narrow cave hidden by creeping plants and the shadows of trees. Its entrance is subtle, visible only to those who truly observe the surrounding details, as if intentionally concealed by nature. Inside the cave, the air is cooler and damp, carrying the scent of wet soil mixed with moss and stone that has existed for thousands of years. The cave walls display grooves and natural indentations, some resembling carvings or symbols that may have held meaning for the ancient humans who once inhabited this place. Light from outside penetrates only through small gaps, casting slowly moving shadows, giving the impression that the cave lives by its own rhythm, as if holding stories it does not wish to reveal completely. The soft yet constant sound of water droplets falling from stalactites to the cave floor adds a serene yet mysterious atmosphere, seemingly the pulse of a cave that existed long before humans knew time. Faint footprints appear on the ground, partly covered by dust and moss, leaving questions about who walked here and why they chose this cave for shelter or ritual. Some stone formations appear unique, as if arranged intentionally, while others are purely natural. Yet to patient observers, these subtle differences evoke deep curiosity. The damp aroma, combined with cool air, provides a natural sensation that makes visitors feel small, yet connected to something larger than themselves. Every drop of water, every crack in the stone, and every moving shadow forms a hidden narrative, undocumented but perceivable by those willing to slow their breath and merge with the cave. This cave, though silent and concealed, becomes a portal to an unseen past, a place where time feels different and mystery coexists with tranquility. Its presence in the valley reminds that even when nature appears calm, it holds layers of stories that can only be uncovered through patient observation and a heart open to the unknown. At the deepest part of the cave, a narrow corridor descends into a darker chamber where almost no light from outside penetrates. The corridor feels cool, damp, and silent, with only the sound of water droplets falling slowly and the occasional rustle of small creatures moving within stone crevices. The walls display faint patterns, some resembling signs, others seeming like natural formations that create their own narrative for patient observers. A thin layer of dust covers the floor, indicating the infrequent passage of humans. Yet some ancient footprints remain faintly visible, hinting that this corridor was traversed repeatedly thousands of years ago. The scent of wet soil mixed with moss provides a deep sense of long past time, as if the cave has held its breath from the past, storing it in every crack and stalactite. Occasionally, wind enters through narrow gaps in the ceiling, bringing fresh air that cools the corridor and creates soft sounds blending with an almost imperceptible rhythm of time. For observers sitting quietly, the corridor appears as a channel between the present world and the ancient world, linking the physical space with untouched imagination. Every shadow cast on the walls seems to depict movements of ancient beings, even though it is merely light and stone shapes enough to evoke gentle curiosity. As one slowly walks through the corridor, the profound silence allows the mind to uncover layers of mystery, raising questions about past life and how ancient beings interacted with this cave. Every drop of water, every groove on the wall, and every small crack feels like part of a secret language yet to be translated. A language only understood through calmness, observation, and patience. This corridor, though narrow and dark, holds energy from the past, gentle yet continuously flowing through space and time, waiting to be felt by those willing to slow their steps and experience every detail. In the corner of the deepest corridor lies a small alcove that appears intentionally shaped by ancient human hands, though much of its form seems natural. The alcove feels different, as if holding a concentration of energy that is gentle yet tangible, and an observer sitting quietly here can sense a peculiar calm mixed with curiosity. The surface of the alcove is filled with faint grooves, possibly symbols or marks from past rituals, partially covered by dust and moss. Yet for those who observe carefully, the patterns seem to speak without words. On the ceiling of the alcove, small stalactites drip slowly, their sound adding a natural rhythm, almost like a whisper, guiding the mind of the observer into a vast yet tranquil imaginative space. The scent of wet stone and damp soil mingles with cool air, creating a comprehensive sensation that evokes inexplicable memories. A sense that this place once witnessed the lost life of ancient beings. Shadows moving with the dripping water and light entering through narrow gaps create patterns that appear alive, as if ancient creatures still move around, leaving behind subtle yet perceptible traces of their energy. Observers sitting in the alcove often feel a different flow of time where the present and the past seem to converge, giving the impression that the mystery is not only stored in physical form, but also in the surrounding atmosphere. Every small detail, from cracks in the walls to the shapes of stalactites and shadows on the floor, forms a delicate, undocumented narrative, yet it feels real to those willing to observe calmly. This alcove becomes a natural, sacred space where nature and the traces of ancient humans meet, allowing observers to sense something larger and older than themselves. The silence and gentle rhythm of water droplets, gusts of air, and light filtering through gaps create a soothing experience while leaving a lingering curiosity, as if the cave has stories it always wants to whisper but never fully speaks. Further along the corridor lies a wider chamber with a flat floor and more regular walls compared to the previous passage, as if serving as the central space of the cave for ancient activities. On the floor are faint footprints and impressions, some large and deep, likely belonging to ancient humans, while others are smaller and lighter, possibly animals that lived alongside them. At several points, small piles of stones appear deliberately placed, perhaps as markers or symbols, though their meaning remains mysterious. Light entering through narrow gaps in the ceiling highlights certain stone formations, casting slowly moving shadows, giving the impression that this room lives by its own rhythm. The scent of wet soil mixed with moss and damp stone enhances the strong natural impression, giving a sense that this place has held the breath of the past, storing the energy of life that once existed here. The soft sound of water droplets falling from stalactites above fills the room with a constant calming rhythm, allowing the observer's mind to drift into the past, imagining the lost life here. Some faint grooves on the walls appear to be symbols or signs of ancient communication, partially covered by watermarks. And moss, creating layers of mystery waiting to be uncovered by those who carefully observe. Every crack in the stone, every indentation in the soil, and every shadow formed gives the impression that this room preserves undocumented history and life, allowing the observer to feel the depth of time and the lost narrative. When sitting quietly, the room provides a sensation of connection with the past, with ancient life possibly watching from shadows and lingering traces. This chamber, though silent and enclosed, stands as a silent witness to the rhythm of prehistoric life from footsteps rituals. Two interactions with the surrounding nature, leaving subtle yet palpable traces for those willing to feel every detail with patience and attention. In the corner of the chamber lies a deeper alcove with a slightly elevated floor compared to the surrounding area, as if serving as a special place for certain activities in the past. The floor surface is covered with a thin layer of dust and small stone fragments. Yet some footprints and handprints remain visible, indicating that this place was repeatedly traversed and used. Fine grooves surround the alcove walls, some forming patterns difficult to explain, perhaps symbols or signs of ancient rituals, while others appear as natural erosion that seems to create a secret language for patient observers. Light entering through narrow gaps highlights points on the floor and walls, casting slowly moving shadows and giving the impression that the alcove lives by its own rhythm. The scent of damp soil, stone, and moss creates a profound natural sensation, allowing the observer to feel connected to the distant past and the prehistoric life that once existed here. Each droplet of water falling from stalactites above sounds like a gentle whisper, enhancing the sacred and mysterious impression, as if the cave holds knowledge and experiences that cannot be expressed in words. Shadows formed by the light penetrating the gaps, combined with stone shapes, and wall grooves create the illusion of ancient creatures moving, though it is merely the play of light and natural shapes. Sitting quietly in this alcove provides an awareness of expanded time where the present and past seem to meet, allowing the observer to understand that mystery and prehistoric life are preserved not only in physical traces, but also in the surrounding atmosphere. Every small detail, from stone cracks to stalactite shapes and faint wall grooves, forms a delicate yet tangible narrative, inviting the observer to reflect and immerse in the hidden layers of history. This alcove, though hidden and silent, becomes a point where nature and traces of ancient humans converge, allowing visitors to experience calmness and gentle curiosity, an experience difficult to express in words, but perceivable through full awareness of the surrounding environment. Exploring the hidden corridors and alcoves, an observer will find a small space that appears to have served as a meeting place or temporary shelter for ancient humans, although its form is simple and natural. The floor in this space slopes slightly in certain areas, and there are faint traces of footsteps, partially covered by dust and moss, yet clear enough to indicate that this place was used repeatedly. The surrounding walls are filled with grooves and indentations that seem random to an untrained eye. But for those who are patient, the patterns form a visual language that may have been used for communication or ritual. Several small stones are arranged as if deliberately, perhaps marking important points or special areas within the space. Light from narrow gaps in the ceiling illuminates only small portions of the surfaces, leaving slowly moving shadows that give the impression that the space lives by its own rhythm, following a time different from the outside world. The sound of water droplets falling from stalactites and the rustle of wind entering through gaps create a natural, soothing rhythm, allowing the observer's mind to drift into the past, imagining the prehistoric life that once existed here. The damp aroma of soil, stone, and moss evokes a profound sense of long past time, giving the impression that this place holds the breath of the past and the energy of life that once existed. Every detail, from cracks in the floor to stone shapes and moving shadows, forms a delicate narrative that is undocumented yet feels real to those who are willing to sit and observe quietly. This small space becomes a point where history, nature, and traces of ancient humans converge, allowing the observer to feel calmness along with gentle curiosity, an experience that awakens awareness of the layers of mystery still contained within the cave. The presence of this space reminds that even when a place appears quiet and simple, it holds deep stories and unseen energy, waiting to be felt by those willing to slow down and immerse themselves in every detail with full attention. At the end of the deepest corridor lies the quietest and darkest chamber, where almost no light penetrates, leaving shadows that move slowly and giving the impression of time slowing down. This space feels sacred, as if holding the purest energy of the prehistoric life that once existed within the cave. The rough floor is filled with cracks and indentations, some indicating footprints of humans and ancient animals, while the walls are adorned with faint grooves that might be ritual symbols or communication now no longer understood. The scent of wet stone and damp soil mingled with moss creates a profound sensation, reminding that this place once witnessed lost life. The sound of water droplets falling from stalactites above resembles a slow heartbeat of time, enhancing the sense of stillness and peace enveloping the space. Shadows formed by the minimal light create the illusion of ancient creatures moving. Though it is merely the play of light and natural shapes, enough to evoke gentle curiosity in the observer's mind. Every small detail, from floor cracks to wall grooves and stone shapes, forms a delicate yet tangible narrative, inviting the observer to reflect and experience the layers of mystery contained within. Sitting quietly in this chamber, one can feel a connection to the distant past, realizing that mystery and prehistoric life are preserved not only in physical traces, but also in the energy and atmosphere surrounding it. This deepest space becomes the climax of the journey through the cave, where every step, every shadow, and every sound merge into an experience that soothes while gently awakening curiosity, leaving the impression that the cave holds stories never fully revealed, always waiting to be felt by those patient enough to observe. And at the end of this journey, as eyes grow weary and the mind drifts, the cave leaves behind a soft and warm silence, as if wrapping the observer in a blanket of unspoken mystery. The ancient footprints frozen in stone, the faint grooves on the walls, and the slowly moving shadows seem to remind that life, though lost and forgotten, leaves traces that remain for those willing to see. The droplets of water from stalactites sound like the slow breathing rhythm of the cave, flowing with time that feels slowed, leaving space for reflection and imagination. Every corner, every crack, every groove becomes a silent witness to life long gone, and at the same time carries a gentle curiosity within the heart of the observer. Sitting quietly and closing the eyes for a moment, one can feel that this mystery does not need an answer. For beauty and tranquility arise from the uncertainty itself. The cave, with every shadow and sound heard, teaches that the prehistoric world remains alive in memory and imagination, and every remaining trace is a story waiting to be felt, not explained. As the night deepens and thoughts wander, the cave continues to hold secrets that are warm yet distant, leaving a comforting, melancholic feeling, as if whispering that there is much more unknown, and perhaps it is better that way. Slowly, the observer leaves the dark corridors and hidden alcoves, carrying calmness and gentle curiosity, letting the mystery linger in the air. A prehistoric tale that never ends, always present among shadows and light filtering through cracks, ready to be discovered again someday.